Good afternoon. My name is Adam Pearson. Some of you may recognize me from the TV. I've got one of those faces. See, did you feel that? Did you feel the awkward tension that just filled this room? For some reason, when disability is mentioned, it turns us all into morons. Like, case in point, I used to live here in Brighton. I studied at Brighton Uni, just up the road in Morscombe, and I was in my house one day. I used to live on the avenue, and the gas man came round. I was the only guy in, and I let him in. He did his job well. It was great. But the entire time, he was looking at me really, really awkwardly. And I was just standing there thinking, either he's worked out I'm disabled, or I'm getting laid. Either way, Mondays just got brilliant. And as he's leaving, he turns to me and, just casual as you like, says, "My friend Paul has a disfigurement. Do you know him?" Well, no. However, my friend Bill is a bit of a twat. Do you know him? And that's got me thinking, why does this happen? Why, when there are 10 million disabled people in the UK, like FYI, we outnumber dogs by 1.8 million. And we all know how to handle a dog. Why is it like that? And it's because it's almost invisible. When you look at things like the mainstream media, you very rarely see it. And when we, as children, when we look for heroes, when we look for role models, we look for people we identify with, people from either similar backgrounds with the same interests, that do what we want to do or excel at what we want to excel at. The title, the name on the marquee, TEDxBrighton, we can be heroes. It's got a real to it, doesn't it? As a business grad, for me, this is like perfect marketing. I imagine the ambiance, the feeling in the room would have been a lot less so had they kind of half-assed the brainstorming meeting. Toby had a rough night out, comes in and goes, "We can be average, I don't know." And it's also much harder to sell it to the speakers as well. I imagine I'd have been a lot less excited had the call come in. "Hi, is that Adam Pearson?" "Yeah." "The Adam Pearson?" "Yeah." "Hi, my name's Toby Moore. I'm calling from TEDxBrighton." "Okay." "We're having an event called We Can Be Average, and we thought you'd be perfect to talk at this." And so when I got into TV, this still narked me. Whenever you see disability or disfigurement on TV, as I said, over 10 million people with disabilities in the UK, 540,000 of which are people who have some kind of facial disfigurement, which is a ballpark average of 1 in every 144 people. Where are they? When you hear the word hero, I don't know who your heroes are. Some people will jump to the great athletes of our time. 1966 World Cup final, 1974 George Foreman, Muhammad Ali, the Rumble in the Jungle. Some of you might be looking forward, like I am, to UFC 205, Conor McGregor, Eddie Alvarez. Some of you may think of the great humanitarians of our time, Martin Luther King, Mother Teresa, Bob Geldof, if that's your kind of thing. But for me, as someone with a disability, I didn't have that. And that left me, A, confused as to where I could fit in general, and also it made me wanting to become a broadcaster or a journalist incredibly unlikely. And I've always been a campaigning type. I campaigned for several charities, and all my work in TV has been a very fortunate byproduct of being very, very good at that. And a lot of the documentaries I make look at the world of disability, but through a very different lens. Disability in documentaries historically has not been done well. If you look at Channel 5, they have these ridiculously, sensationally named programs, and it starts off with this heinous voiceover, Jimmy was born, and then Coldplay Fix You starts playing in the bloody background with a shark for an arm, and then the parents sit there and go, it was hard for Jimmy. No, that's not how we want to be portrayed on television. And it dawned on me from walking around the hallowed halls of BBC Television Centre, long may it rest in peace, that a lot of the decisions about disability were being made by what were mainly white, middle-aged, middle-class men who weren't disabled. And I started asking the right questions to the right people, and eventually caught the attention of the head of TV, Danny Cohen, who, when my contract ended at BBC, I originally worked in diversity in commissioning. I then got into the more production side of things. And BBC Three ran this season about 2 years ago now called Define the Label. They wanted to put out a whole season of programs looking at disability from different angles. And in order to get a very good steer on it, they had this crazy focus group. And one of my friends who I'd worked with in my time there was organising it. So she called me and said, hey, we're running this focus group. Are you into it? And I'm like, I don't like focus groups. We'll have to go around the room, say our name and a fact about ourselves, and no one will listen to what we're saying. It's all HR nonsense. Okay, fair enough. And then we heard nothing about it. And the day of this focus group, she called me in tears, saying, everyone's quit, I need you in that room. Fine. Number one, you owe me dinner. Number two, is at any point I have to say my name and a fact about myself. God. And so I'm in this room, and then I'm far away from the door, which in retrospect was a mistake. And I'm sitting next to my now commissioner, Elliot Reed, and the lady started the session, and lo and behold, name, fact about ourselves. And this girl stood up and said, hi, my name's Ellen, and we all had to go, hi, Ellen. And then she said, and my interesting fact is I have 10 different disabilities. And I said in what was a very quiet voice, all right, chill out, it's not a fucking competition. And then Elliot next to me burst out laughing. So I'm trying to be really subtle about this, but we both look like idiots. Anyway, in the end, he approached me and one of the independent TV companies I work with to make a program looking at disability hate crime, which is quite a loaded issue. Within law, there were 5 protected groups under hate crime legislation, them being based upon race, religion, sexuality, disability, and gender identity. And I wanted to really highlight the massive disparities in the law. Under the Criminal Justice Act, Section 163, if a crime is committed that's motivated by race or religion, there is a kind of 2-year uplift that can be put in place. Whereas the exact same crime committed against someone with a disability, the uplift is only 6 months. And there are all these really interesting discrepancies that exist when you have a disability. And I don't want to stand here and sound like I'm moaning or that I'm not grateful for the provisions for disabled people that exist in the UK. As far as the rest of the world goes, we have it pretty good over here, all 10 million of us. Dare I say we have it better than the 8.2 million dogs that are in the UK. And then after that went out, that did rather well. And in between that, I got to do the earlier mentioned film with Scarlett Johansson, which is good work if you can get it, I suppose. I didn't tell my parents what had happened in the film. I thought I'd let that be a nice surprise. Then go into the cinema expecting a jolly old romp through Scotland, and they see their sons on the screen. How you doing? And then after that film came out, I took a bit of a break and did what my mum calls a proper job. And then I got this random Facebook message from Los Angeles. And you know when you get like an email and you read it and it just jars you slightly? And it's like, hello, Adam, my name is Todd Ray. Fair enough. We saw you in Under the Skin, and we thought you were great. I was great, wasn't I? I own and operate the Venice Beach Freak Show in California. Ah, that's what this is. And I wrote back, polite guy, all that jazz. Dear Todd, thank you for your email, glad you liked the film. Unfortunately, I have no real skills. Here is my mother's email. She will verify. I have no actual skills that could benefit your establishment. Keep in touch, Adam. And then I told my boss about this in the pub one night after work, and he just looked at me and went, would you do it? And I was like, I don't know. And then we ended up making a whole documentary about freak shows. So what started off as this really drunken conversation in a pub turned into this 3-week whirlwind tour of America and Mexico, visiting various freak shows, which is not something that you've previously seen on TV. With everything, it's all about taking what is quite a foreign subject, disability, and doing it in a different way that's engaging with the public. The worst thing that we can do as in TV with disability is just make it all medical. We need to start putting a more human spin on disability, whether that is kind of taking people out to concerts or just doing the right thing, just saying hello. That's all it is. And people may be sitting here thinking that's all well and great for me, but what can we do? And I think we all have it in us to be heroes. We all have it in us to tell great stories and make a real impact in our lives. And there are 3 simple questions I believe we can ask ourselves that will enable us to make a great difference, not only in our lives, but in those of the people around us. Number 1, what do we like? Number 2, what are we good at? It's at this point I normally stop and have to clarify that if what you like and what you're good at aren't legal, then please sign other things. Like, so often I say that to young people, and they come up to me afterwards and go, I can do that? I'm like, no, that's not what I meant. Put the porn away and think of a different idea, and then come back to me. But number 3, what pisses you off? Quite often, if we can find what our misery is, we can find what our quote-unquote ministry is. I, from walking around the, as I said, hallowed halls of BBC, TVC, saw what I didn't like about our industry, saw how badly we're handling disability, and decided to be that irritating voice of reason that was part of making a change. And we are now 6 years, God, I'm old, 6 years from when I first started in TV, and we're making very good strides. Channel 4 and the Paralympics have done wonders. Alex, Adam, and Josh on the last leg are amazing, and that's really helped to normalize disability. So I would encourage all of you, find what difference you want to make in this world. Decide what you want to be, and go and be it. No excuses, full throttle. I've been Adam Pearson. Thank you for your time.